What's the haps? I'm Meroka, and today I'm going to be taking a quick look at 3/4 Home Extended Edition by Bracket Games. This is a strange kind of game. It's very difficult to put into the video critique format. It's very narrative heavy, and if you were interested in this game but were trying to avoid narrative spoilers, a video is probably not the best format for that, so I will say spoiler alert now. I guess the best option if you're wanting to do that is to just basically listen to this video as audio only and just change your browser tab or something to something else and listen to this in the background, because quite frankly if you're watching the video you're going to see narrative. It's like very close to 100% narrative and you're going to get story spoilers. That's just the way it is. There's no options menu to speak of, which would normally be one of the first things I would look at, because it is a Unity-based game, so you've kind of got your Unity pre-launcher thing. You've got 4 graphics options on a drop-down menu, and you've also got the resolution options and rebindable keys there as well. Not there's many keys to do. It's mechanically very basic, so you're not going to find a lot there. As you just saw, there's kind of 2 options to pick from story-wise. You've got the main story and the epilogue. You don't have to play them in any specific order, but obviously main story should probably come before the epilogue, otherwise, to be fair, the epilogue might well spoil a lot of stuff, because that would just be silly. But it's an option, I guess, if you wanted to do that. The epilogue is kind of a part of the extended edition. It's the main bulk of what makes up the extended edition, which is kind of the re-release of this game on Steam with more content than the previous version. And it's an extra 20 to 30 minutes over the main story being somewhere in the region of an hour long. It's mostly reading, so a great deal of how long the game takes depends on how fast you can read, to be honest. The game doesn't really progress any faster unless you read faster. So, we are Kelly. We are driving home through the middle of Nebraska, as you just saw. It's in the middle of a storm. We have our car here, and as soon as we get a phone call here, and we're allowed to drive, if I hold down D, we can drive! This is like most of the mechanic of the game. Holding D to drive. I think you can also hold right on the arrow keys, but most of the other car controls, such as they are sort of around the WASD keys, so you're probably going to need D for that. You're going to use E is a horn, I guess, if you wanted a horn. I can tell you now, you're not going to run into anything else on the road, so you might not need that. R turns off your headlights whilst you're driving through in near dark in the rain. Yeah, good idea. Again, doesn't seem to have much impact on anything. It seems like it should, I would have said, but it doesn't. And T, we can turn the wipers on and off, and that makes almost no difference whatsoever to anything whatsoever in the game. When it gets really quiet later on, if you don't have any music on, you can kind of just about make out the sound of the wipers, but that's about it. It's just a very quiet background audio effect. I also got Q. If I press Q, we can put the tape deck on, and that's going to play some music. It's going to be mostly kind of an ambient kind of stuff, but it does set the tone for a lot of the events that go on. It's a good soundtrack that fits the game extremely well. It's not intrusive. It just kind of it's in the background and it does its job. So the actual mechanics of the game are not revolving around the car. The car has most of the controls, but the car provides none of the actual mechanics or anything of interest in the game. As you can see at the bottom of the screen says, hello! We're on the phone. So we're on the phone to our mom. We're going to be driving home along this straight road through the middle of Nebraska, through endless cornfields, for I guess that is what Nebraska is known for, I suppose. And we've got narrative choices. We can talk to our parents, talk to our dad later on, and our brother as well. Family conversations mostly. It's centering around this family. We've got Kelly, the daughter, mom and dad, and a much younger brother. And we can talk to them over the phone. We've got various conversation options. There's a lot of options. To compare it to a visual novel, I think most people, when they think of visual novels, think predominantly anime stuff, with maybe 1 or 2 options in the entire thing. In many cases, maybe not even any, but generally speaking, not lots of options. Whereas this is very heavy on the narrative options. There's a lot of different dialogue in this, depending on what you say. I don't think it drastically changes the course of events or anything that happens in the story to any great extent, but a lot of the things that you talk about, there's a few options. Occasionally along the top, like you can see there, we're going past the power plants. They will mention something in the story, and we will drive past it along the top. Those events seem mostly to be tied to the conversation rather than how long you've been driving, so I can keep driving for like an hour here, and I will probably just go through cornfields as long as I don't advance the story, to be honest. So, depending on what we say, we'll see things along the top. I don't think it really changes anything. I think the course of the story and the actual course of the conversation mostly stays the same. He'll talk about some occasionally slightly different topics depending on what you say to people. You'll get different options. I played the game about 1.5 times now, the second half time, mostly just to see where the conversation went different. And ultimately it kind of follows the same direction as a whole, but depending on what you say to your mom and what you say to your dad, you can pry into different issues. There are a number of different issues surrounding the family. Kelly's clearly got her own issues. The dad's recently lost his job due to an accident. He's now on disability. The family's having financial troubles, and the younger son, it's never made abundantly clear what the issue is, but he has some kind of learning disability potentially, and he's been pulled out of school recently. So you can talk to all three of them about any of those issues, some of them more than others, and they've all got their own personal issues. And you can just kind of explore the family and the problems surrounding them and their lives. And some of the conversation's really mundane. It's just everyday life, and sometimes you're prying deep into issues, and maybe they won't even want to talk about it. And depending on what you pick, you'll get different stuff. And it's a really fascinating story. It's a really fascinating family to get a glimpse into the insight of. It's entirely fictional, although I believe a lot of the aspects of it are drawn from the developer's personal experience as well as those of his friends and family as well. So it's grounded in reality, but in its entirety it is a work of fiction. I don't think the game lasts quite long enough to ever get particularly very attached to the characters. Most of the other particularly heavy narrative works I've appreciated and recommended over the course of the last couple of years, most of those are a little longer than these games, and you kind of have enough time to... You spend enough time with the characters to get attached to them. I think for an hour, this game, you don't really get particularly attached to the characters. The narrative is certainly very interesting, it's very compelling. I was keen to see what happened next, but at the end of the day, I didn't really feel a lot from many of the characters too much, because I spent so very little time with them, I think, as a whole. You know, when I compare to the two main standout narrative experiences in my mind are To the Moon, which is 3 to 4 hours long, and indeed Always Sometimes Monsters, which is near the 9 to 10 hour mark. All of those, you spend a much longer time with any of the characters, and they resonate with you a lot better, and they become a part of your life, really. Whereas these characters, they never really do. This is just kind of prying into someone else's life a little bit voyeuristic, perhaps. I'm not sure, but yeah. The audio design, I will say, is fantastic in this game. You've kind of got this driving rain and the lightning in the background. The soundtrack, as I say, complements it very nicely. All the audio design in this game sets the atmosphere really, really well. I suspect playing with headphones on greatly improves that. I did play it with headphones on. It was an excellent experience for it. I think it probably would still work with speakers, but I do think headphones probably help the proceedings quite a lot. So there's some great ambient sound design here. Really, really does set the atmosphere really, really well. So I believe the developers say there's about 800 choices in the story. They'll say it doesn't necessarily do a lot, but you get slightly different dialogue. There is almost an entire short story later on in the narrative. At some point you start talking to your brother, and your brother will read you an entire story that he's written. And I believe there are 5 different stories in the game. I presume the choices you pick throughout talking to the characters will determine which story you're going to get. Although I played through to that point twice now. Well, first time I played through entirely, second time I played through to that point, and I got the same story twice over. So I don't know. Don't know how you unlock them. I presume it's through doing different narrative choices, but it's hard to say. You can actually, in the extras menu, if you go back to the main menu, there is an extra section where you can just read through all the stories as well, and they're quite entertaining in their own right. They are at least the one I've read, certainly quite a good story. I imagine if the other 4 are of the same caliber, they're certainly worth reading. It's not a long experience, but they're pretty good in and of themselves. So this is kind of it. This is pretty much all of it. There's not a lot more here, to be honest. It's just an insight into the family of Kelly and her parents and her brother. It's a really good story. I mean, if you're interested in a narrative experience, it's very, very enjoyable. Like I say, you can't quite make the personal connection that you might with a slightly longer experience, but nonetheless, I think it's well worth a look. So, I'm going to stop now. There's this one other mechanic which, honestly, I'm not quite sure what this is about, if I'm totally honest. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like I'm not clever enough to understand what's going on here, like, to be quite honest with you. If you stop driving, if you let go of D at any point, you kind of just go into slow motion. Every time kind of comes to a near standstill. The text fades off the screen because you can't talk to people at that speed. The rain comes to a near halt. The music slows right down until it stops. And yeah, you do this, and then when you press D and carry on driving, everything starts again. I don't quite get that, if I'm entirely honest. I feel like that's got some deep artsy metaphor that I'm not getting. Honestly, nothing that I've read about the game has ever actually touched on the fact that that mechanic even exists. It does. The downside of that does mean that you have to hold down the D key for an hour straight, which is in order to keep driving, in order to keep playing the game. So that's not terribly fun. If you've got something to weigh down the D key with, that's probably a good way to do that. If you've got a heavy ball bearing or something, just to sit on the D key, that would save you some. That would save you some finger stress, certainly. I do think. But if I head out now, I can take you back to the main menu, because honestly, there's not a lot more mechanics. There's your anti-aliasing option for whatever reason. We head back on out. I'll show you the extras menu and a little bit of the prologue, because the prologue is not prologue, epilogue. Some kind of log at any rate. It is the epilogue. The epilogue is slightly mechanically different, although not a lot. If this first 10 minutes was spoilers, then the epilogue is definitely spoilers. So if you definitely don't want that spoiling, I would very much turn to audio only now, I would say. So this sets the context for a lot of things. That start from the top doesn't mean from the beginning of the game, I don't think, which is weird. If you select no, it just goes back to the main menu. I don't know why that menu is actually there at all. It just seems completely and utterly superfluous. It's just to confirm that you want to start the story for some reason. So this part of it is just kind of walking through the snow. This is now living in Minnesota. You're kind of walking along the side of the road in the snow, waiting for your bus to turn up, and talking to your mother on the phone, which is a very familiar mechanic at this stage. So there's a lot of unskippable bits in this game, which I guess is kind of part of their maybe artistic design, as it were, but it's probably not going to affect a lot of people too much. If you only play through the game once, it's fine, but when I've tried to launch this a few times now, it kind of grates a bit. We've got this, which I think, as it says, is pretty much almost entirely performance-based, so I think this mostly is just sort of to tune things down for a lower-end computer. You can make less snowflakes if you're having trouble rendering snowflakes. You're not capturing, I'm the one capturing. There we go, so we've got two options, call mom or wait. I think if you just wait, I think it just ends the story there. So we can call mom, and then we can go into conversation. And I'm allowed to walk around whilst I'm on the phone once we've made the phone call. So mom, hello, hi mom, it's me. Who's me? It can't be Kelly, she never calls. And now I'm allowed to walk, so we can use A to go backwards now, which is totally novel. So we can walk along, and same old story options along the bottom. So there you go. It's more of the same. It's walking to the right. The animation quality is not amazing. The animation quality is a bit janky there, to be honest, the walk cycle and whatnot. But is it a major part of the game? Probably not. You're not really going to be staring at Kelly walking. You're kind of looking at the story. It'd be nice if the animations were better, but it doesn't make a great deal in the grand scheme of things. Now we can stop and walk back at any time. For some reason, the bus stop just fades into existence and prevents us progressing if we try and walk any further back. So, weird phantom bus stop thing going on there. I'm not sure what that's about. But, yeah, it's more walking to the right, occasionally to the left if you so desire, but not very far. And you walk through the snow and talk to your parents. And this basically, the whole point of the epilogue is it provides a lot of context to the events of the main story. There's a lot that's left unexplored, unfinished, unsaid within the main story, and the epilogue kind of touches on a lot of those issues and explores some of the characters that were maybe mentioned in passing but never delved into. Now you can actually learn a little bit more about it, add some more context to it. So it's an extra 20 to 30 minutes that just expands on the story, and it's quite a nice extra touch. But yeah, again, not a lot more to it than that. That's kind of that. So I'll head on out again. It's, like I say, same mechanics. If I quit. We've also got the extras menu. Yes, I really want to quit. The whole menu thing sort of gently drifting off the top of the screen and on from the bottom of the screen and whatnot. It's, like I say, it's all unskippable, and it's really annoying when you're trying to do it multiple times. It may not be an issue for someone who's literally just going to play through the game once, but it's something I've run into enough times at this point that it's starting to grate a little bit. And then the title screen, we've got to wait for everything to drift in. So more, that's our extras menu. So we have radio, so you kind of got a jukebox kind of thing. You can listen to all songs that are in the game. You got stories. This is probably going to be the most interesting one. You've got the 5 stories that your brother writes and can read to you over the phone. Once these load, it takes a surprisingly long time to load considering it's text, but hey. Eventually we've got Wanderer in the Wastes, The Orchard, 3/4 Home, The Drunkard, and Untitled. I don't know whether Untitled is just like the easiest one to get or something, and you have to make very specific choices to get the others or something, but I've got Untitled has come up twice now for me, having picked the same ones. The stories seem to kind of relate to the main story in a weird metaphorical kind of way. I genuinely have the feeling that if you talk about the dad a lot, perhaps you get the drunkard story. I feel like depending on what you've talked about, if you talk about things that relate to them, you kind of end up with specific ones, whereas I guess if you kind of pick more general choices, maybe you end up with Untitled. Like I say, it's strange. It's one of those things that I think is perhaps best left to the viewer to actually come up with an interpretation for it. I'm not that clever, but yeah, there's definitely some elements of metaphor going on in the story there. So that's kind of most of what you got going on. There's also photos, which is kind of just, I think, it's a series of 30 photographs, which tie into events that are mentioned in the epilogue. So without playing the epilogue, they won't have a lot of context for you. So that's kind of it. That is 3/4 Home. That's pretty much what it's got going on. If you're looking for a good narrative experience, I think this is a very good narrative experience. Like I say, I don't know whether I want to compare it to the other games that I mentioned earlier. It's kind of its own thing. It's very different. If you're looking for something with a lot of in-depth mechanics, this is definitely not what you're looking for. If you're looking for something which actually got a lot going on, you're not going to find it. If you're looking for a really great story, this is pretty interesting. I can handily recommend this. This is out now. It is available through Steam as well as indeed itch and the Humble Store. It's available for $6.99 or your regional equivalent, I do believe, and there may be for a little while longer going on a little bit of a launch sale as well, so if you snag it fast you might just be able to grab that as well. Well, there you go, that is 3/4 Home Extended Edition. I think it's well worth a look if you're into narrative stuff. So thank you very much for watching. I've been Meroka. I'll see you next time.